Good Morning Show with Oliver O.T. Thomas.
We're back. Welcome back to the Good Morning Show. Oliver O.T. Thomas, the early bird, the professor, in all of the WBOK Kingdom, man, all across this country, this nation, even those listening abroad, man. We appreciate your support. WBOK 1230 AM.
What New Orleans is talking about.
New Orleans is talking about, man. New Orleans is always talking about the Good Morning Show. I want to thank Will Sutton, man. Insightful. Great interview as always. Thank you, Will, not only for contributing to the show, but Prof, we know he keeps us abreast, gets our opinions on a lot of the information going on, includes us in some of his writing, and has been a big supporter of the show since he's been back home. So
it's a great partnership.
Yeah, it really is, man. He's a senior editorial writer, TimesPicayune.com, and The Advocate. So thank you, Will. It was a great segment. But talking about a great segment, especially in light of our conversation earlier, the wanted 12-year-old that's out there, the incident that I highlighted that had me upset this morning about family friends whose 13-year-old was bike jacked at Bunny Friend Park, had a pistol pulled on him and confronted with his life by other kids. Extremely disturbing. And I know someone who's dedicated their life to folk understanding sad, not bad. And how do we begin to help our children in their mental health as well as our general health? Dr. Denise Shervington, the founder and creator of the B-Sides Healing is the Revolution podcast. Dr. Shervington, welcome back to the Good Morning Show.
Thank you so much, Oliver. And I always enjoy being with you because of your deep care and concern that as a community we live our lives optimally and caring for ourselves and each other. So thank you for all that you do to contribute to that.
Well, we appreciate you also, especially what you've dedicated your life to personally and professionally. Doc, can you, I touched on it last time you were here, but I didn't get the definition of why this phrase that you're famous for now, especially in your community and internationally. What does sad, not bad mean, especially in light of the conversations we're having now, but we perceive as bad children?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really it was an effort to increase our awareness that when children are harmed, when they're hurt, when inside they feel frightened, they feel afraid, they feel sad, that they don't have the yet emotional capacity oftentimes or the language to really share what's happening inside of them, the sadness that they feel. So what you see, it happens with their behaviors. A child learns to understand their feelings by the adults who are caring for them, actually telling them what feelings mean. So when a child is crying, a caretaker says, "Oh, you're sad," and then I'm going to comfort you. If children in their early years do not grow up in an environment where they are nurtured, and in particular where they are soothed when they hurt, they will not be able to have the emotional intelligence and language to later on manage their feelings. We also see young people growing up in an environment oftentimes because of toxic social adversities, just a milieu of toxicity. The norms in our community tend sometimes to drift towards more aggressive behaviors. And so what we see happening without young people being taught how to understand their inner world, and in particular without them when they feel bad, frightened, sad, angry, they don't have someone to help them, to soothe them, then you're going to see these behaviors. And if we as families and as a community are not nurturing our children sufficiently to give them the tools they need, what we're going to see is the behaviors that we label bad. Our responsibility, every time a young person does something that's not within the norms, adults have failed them. And we've got to wake up to that.
So how much do we know about the mental health, children, and how to deal with it. If you were listening to the conversation this morning, there's so much frustration. There was my frustration about what happened to the kid of my family friends. There was so much frustration in knowing that right now we have a 12-year-old that's wanted, that's out there, that there's a manhunt for a 12-year-old. If you hurt Prof, and we got city leaders and officials now adopting Prof's turn them in Tuesday, and turn them in to save them, but also to protect us. Do we really, as a society, have we embraced mental health around children? Do we truly understand the role that we all play, Dr. Shervington?
No, we don't. Mm-hmm. We do not, nor do we care to, it appears. Ooh. It seems easy to blame. Children will not understand themselves, other people, and the world they live in unless, as adults, we turn up in their lives and help them with that. We have to. Children cannot survive without the loving care and nurturance of caretakers in their lives. In fact, when we're infants, if we don't get touched, if we don't get soothed, in the early days of our life, we will fail to grow, and some infants even die. So we just are social animals, and we need to nurture our children so that they can feel loved and cared for, and they understand the value of their humanity, so that they can understand the humanity of other people, and they won't harm them.
So there's this quest for solutions. Of course, New Orleans has been on this roller coaster for years, especially when youth violence and overall violence. We see juvenile crime even before we hit this wave of an 87% increase in murder, 73% increase in burglary and robbery. Juvenile crime last year spiked tremendously. Prof, many of us have talked about what we lose in transition from when a kid goes to school and to go back home. How do we begin to set up institutions, right? Because I've heard folks say, whether they're nonprofits who deal with kids, that, hey, man, when we have them, they're studious, they're stable. I've had schools, I've participated, I volunteer in schools. When we have them for that time, we have them in school. They're studious, they're stable, they're respectful. And then they go home, and we have to start over again the next day. That takes the life out of institutions in our society. What do we do?
We have to support families. We can't just focus on the child. We also have to focus on the needs of their caretakers. And we've got to stop seeing people who are struggling to survive poverty, violence. We've got to stop seeing them as problems and as people who need support. And so to help that young child, I think it's really lovely that we have some schools, we call them trauma-informed, and they're paying attention to the emotional well-being of their children. But we also need to make sure that their families have a home, that they have a job, that they are meeting their basic needs for survival. Otherwise, we're going to just put them in a toxic space. Now, some kids are going to do okay, no matter what, but that's just a small percentage of kids. Most kids need to have a caring environment, both in their schools and in their homes. And so if we want to fix it, we're going to have to help parents achieve some degree of stability, economic and social stability, so that some of the challenges that they have at home can be mitigated.
We're talking to Dr. Denise Shervington. She is the founder and creator of the B-Sides. It's a podcast, Healing is a Revolution, starting this movement about revolutionary healing, especially about mental health. Prof.
Yeah, Dr. Shervington, I look at schools as being more of outpatient therapy. Because you come in, you get your therapy, and then you go home, but you go back home to the environment that is not conducive. So what about this whole concept of behavior modification and being able to control your environment? Because a lot of the times, if you're sick enough, you got to stay at the hospital. You cannot go back home because you're going to get worse. But what about this whole concept of behavior modification and the ability to control the environments that these children are returning back to?
Great question.
Behavior modification goes but so far, because usually unless someone has a deep understanding of why, it's really hard to maintain the behaviors we want them to. So if I know that I act aggressively, because oftentimes it's something, my brain chemistry might be a little altered if I've grown up in toxic environments. And so whenever I feel threatened, my first attempt to protect myself is to be aggressive. So if we're growing up with those kinds of experiences in our lives, it might help if someone takes us, we do some behavior modification or training, the next time you feel so-and-so, count to 10 before you do anything. That usually will suffice for a while, but eventually people tend to go back to those behaviors unless they truly understand sufficiently that the reason they engage in these behaviors are due to certain feelings. He said, we've attempted to disconnect behaviors from emotions. Well, guess what? Our body operates from our emotional space. The physical body reacts to is the container of our emotions. And if we don't have the two of them working together in concert, eventually one is going to, fail the other. And I think we've gone back now in terms of mental health to connecting emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. They do not operate separately. And the person has to have a sense, some capacity to mentalize and understand their thoughts, how they're connected to their feelings and their actions. When that happens, it's so much easier to modulate those behaviors.
Let's go to the lines. Miss Alicia, you're on with Dr. Denise Shervington. The B-Sides, Healing is a Revolution podcast. Miss Alicia.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning, all. I wanted to speak on what Dr. Shervington mentioned about touch. Mm-hmm. I was a public health nurse in the city of New Orleans in their well baby clinics, and oh my God, we need those well baby clinics back for public health nursing. And I used to tell my moms, my little young moms, whenever, they say, little people tell them, don't pick up the baby, let that baby cry, I would teach them. Babies cry for certain reasons. They're wet, they're discomfort. They're hungry, they're in pain. If you've checked off the list with all those things, the last thing is tender, loving care. Pick up your baby, touch your baby, hold your baby, love your baby. And even when they get older, like my baby boy, when he was going from elementary into the junior high setting, they get that age, they don't want to be seen as loving, and they don't want you to kiss them in front of their friends or hug them. So when I first experienced that with my little baby boy, I noticed he would hurry up and get in front of me so he'd get to the car before I could hug him and kiss him. And I said, okay, I got you. So when we would get in the car, I would tell him, okay, now give me my love. It's just love, and it brings me to tears that people overlook the fact that these children out here, they need love. And we have a lack of that for them. And I just wanted to speak on that, and you're so right about just a simple touch can change a child. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Miss Alicia. 504-582-9422. We're talking to Dr. Denise Shervington. She's president of IWEST, the Institute of Women and Ethnic Studies, and the chair of psychiatry at the Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science. Also the founder and creator of the B-Sides, Healing is a Revolution, starting and leading the way with this podcast, Dr. Shervington, so that healing will lead the new revolution. Mental health. Don't we all suffer from some form of challenge around mental health? And especially, is it possible for any of us to go through this pandemic, whether a man, woman, child, black, white, rich, poor, young or old, and not be affected mentally?
No, if we do, that means something is wrong with our brain. Because whenever our brain senses there's a threat to our survival, it makes us a little bit more hyper alert. We sense we have a little bit of anxiety telling us that there is danger. The issue, though, is we have to know how to, one, recognize that our anxiety or even some sadness or fear that this is normal because we are in an abnormal situation. But then we have to learn how to manage our anxiety. We don't want to avoid it. We don't want to avoid it because it's telling us there's danger. So how do we manage? And you know what's really simple? And whenever, as a professional, we talk about mindfulness or the breath, people think, really? That sounds so corny. Well, that's how the body is wired to soothe itself. It's through breath awareness. When we do that, the body releases the neurotransmitters we need to calm our bodies down.
Yeah, I'm always asking Prof to take a deep breath.
Why?
Because you raise a lot of interesting points that excite our audience, and like Tournament Tuesday. And so sometimes I say it's time for us to take a deep breath here in the studio because we get excited about these issues. And so you're saying that it doesn't always have to be some deep psychological theory or some formula. Just a moment of calm can have an impact.
Absolutely. A moment of presence. Like if you find yourself drifting into negative thoughts, as we all are doing, there's been so much negativity around us, so much existential despair. We're almost, I think, seeing the really dark side of humanity, that real darkness. And so we all have these moments where we're questioning what's happening, what's the meaning of life, all those things. We feel sad, we've lost loved ones, the holidays are coming, we have to modify our behaviors.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we need to just have some presence. So just literally try to stop the mind from going on and on and on. And just be aware of where we are. Like right now, where am I sitting? What's happening in my body? How is it feeling? My breath? Am I breathing? And we would be surprised. I am oftentimes surprised at how much better I feel with a minute or two of mindfulness in periods of really deep stress. And the more we engage this practice of being present with our reality, not going backwards into what had gone wrong or worrying about what could happen, we actually get the energy to be able to make it to the next moment. And that's what we want to do, to make it to the next moment, the next breath.
Dr. Shervington,
because without that, we die.
As we know, we are approaching Thanksgiving this week. And you just mentioned something about people tend to be sad about losing loved ones. Yeah. And I never did understand.
Everybody's not happy during the holidays.
I know, but I never did understand because death is something that we, at some point, we all are going to do. And I never understood. And my father died a few years ago, right? But I wasn't really sad because I felt like I did everything I could possibly do for him while he was living. After being sick for many years. And so I was rejoiced in the fact that he was finally released and had gone back home to the Maker. But I don't associate my holidays with sadness because I let those memories be where they are. And so I never understood that, Dr. Shervington.
Yeah, this is a tough time for a lot of people. Go ahead, Dr.
But why?
Yeah.
I think loss, so clearly you have a process of managing loss that many people don't have. We all tend to have a lot of anxiety about death. We have anxieties about our own. When someone dies, it triggers our own, whether conscious or unconscious anxiety that we too will die. So that's usually a kind of given. But as you said, you've learned over time that by being present with someone you love, caring for them, that if they go on, when their physical body ends, that you can let go. For some people, they're not that far along in their own emotional development. Loss is hard, and it's how do you hold the space in your heart, the hole that has been left with the person who's gone, but the joy of the memories of how you had interacted with them. And for some people, it's a real balance. Clearly, you're on the other side of it, more the joyfulness or just being at peace with the memories you have of your father.
But is it the result of guilt? Because I think in my mind a lot of people are sad because they felt like they didn't do for, or they didn't have the conversation, or they as a matter of guilt, wishing they could have done more, wishing they could have said more, wishing they could have forgave them for something. Because I just don't understand.
I think it could be
what
that.
role does guilt
I think
play
it could be that and more, Prof. And I think you're right. Corey, you're on with OT Prof and Dr. Shervington. Brother Corey, you're on the air.
Well, let me say that our children is growing up in a whole different system than we grew up now. And Dr. Sharp, I think we should implement, you into our schools, elementary schools, and give every child in their psychological treatment. See, we are under this, what they call the Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates system of the education. And we need to change that because it's teach our children retardation and all different things that temper them for them proceeding to a life of true expectancy to attain the true purpose of being doctors and lawyers, but they've been trained to be workers and sub-workers. And now we have the Teach for America come in where they're predominantly all, quote-unquote, Caucasians. So we have to go back to our schools and have this psychological treatment for our children now. And I'm asking you, is there any type of program that y'all have that y'all going to these elementary schools and actually give them some evaluations and stuff and see can we solve that issue right there before they reach the third grade?
Thank you, Brother Corey. Thank you. Dr. Shervington.
Do you want me to respond?
Yeah. There's so many studies have said that by the third grade, you can determine whether it's the pipeline to prison. By the third grade, you can determine through testing and behavior the life expectancy or the actions of that child by the third grade. So Brother Corey is referencing many of those studies.
Mm-hmm. Well, the good news is, you know what? A child's brain is very plastic. It's resilient. And if we do the right things for kids, they can, even though they've had adversity, their brain can reshape itself with good inputs, and they can succeed. But I certainly do agree with what the gentleman said. We are not educating our children as if we expect greatness from them. We barely tolerate them in our system. And much of the work that I've done with my organization, IWES in New Orleans, is to really, really point out that each child has amazing potential, but they have to be nurtured and cared for in schools, and they need to feel like they belong and they have value. We did a project in one of the schools where we actually went in and helped teachers during the social emotional learning period, help teachers just to be playful. Children need to play. They need outlets, for their little psyches. And we did that in this one school with young kids for a year, and we did all the research around it. And there was significant improvement in the kids' behaviors and in their academic achievement. We're actually scaling up that program to the whole network. And this has been my hope and dream for New Orleans, is that we screen all young people coming into our schools, have a sense of emotionally where they are. For the ones who are doing well and they just need support, we do all the things in the school environment to support their well-being, which means play. We're way too rigid with our children when they're young. They shouldn't be tracking people's eyes or walking on a line to the cafeteria. We don't do that in private schools. We allow kids to bounce and do all the things developmentally that they should. So with these kids, what we did in this program where we really worked with the teachers to have an hour a week of playfulness and also to teach the kids to lovingly play with each other. Then for the kids who are showing symptoms of some kind of dysregulation, we would work with the school, counseling staff, social workers to find the appropriate kind of intervention for that kid in school. And then, there's some folks who come, whether it's a combination of genetics and the environment, or it's all genetics, who already have significant mental health challenges, and then we would try to work with the school to make sure that they go to get the proper clinical intervention. This can be done. There are school systems that do this, and when we do that, it's really an act of equity, because we're not punishing the kids who have mental health disorders. We're not criminalizing them. We're saying that they have mental health needs, and we are going to support those needs. But you have to know what they are, and you can only know that through some kind of screening.
Dr. Sherman, you gave an example earlier of a person, what happened with my son versus something that happened. The late Roy Glapion and his wife, Joyce Glapion, owned Tommy Tucker Daycare, and they had a couple of daycare facilities. And I remember a story that happened there. I told the story this morning. My son, who's 4, little Ollie, woke up, and he came to my bed, and he said, "Daddy, I got to tell you something." And I said, "What?" So I'm thinking something's going on, He wet in the bed, or he had a nightmare. He says, "Daddy," he says, "I got to tell you." I said, "What?" He said, 1 + 1 is 2. I said, so that was his revelation at 3 o'clock this morning. He had to get up to tell me that. So I said, "Okay, yes, it is. Make sure you go potty, so you don't wake up swimming, and go back to bed." And then I remembered the story of the young kid when Joyce Glapion told me the story of the young kid at one of her daycares, who said, "Ms. Glapion, I got to show you something." And she said, "Like what? What got to show you something?" He was taking and breaking up the cotton balls and rolling them into little pieces that represented the crack or the dope that he saw smoked in the home where he grew up in. And Prof keeps saying, dealing with the kids is one thing, but unless we get the resources to deal with the environment they go back in to repair and uplift families, we're constantly going back and forth. How does this healing revolution that you're started begin to deal and address all of it holistically?
Well, we have to start with recognizing the intergenerational transmission of trauma. We can go right back to slavery, when they tried to whip all our humanity out of us, and we didn't feel that we belonged. Let's just always hold that, all the injury that comes from there, for a people who for centuries have been told that they're lesser than. They're not fully human, just because another group with their own issues need to dominate and make another group feel inferior so that they can feel superior. So we have this huge overlay of black people throughout the diaspora, and also in Africa, because they have been colonized and they feel the same inferiority that they did to those of us who were enslaved is the same thing they did in the countries they colonized in Africa. So we're all about at the same place of blackness. And centuries of that, as Frantz Fanon said, and more later, I'm blocking her name, and it will come back to me. She was at the CDC, talked about we internalize our worthlessness. And we have to be really careful. I can remember if we all, my generation, and I'm in my 60s of black woman, I was made to feel so badly about being a black girl. My hair wasn't right, my nose wasn't right. Well, my skin color was okay, but I didn't have the other things. And I had to undo those feelings of shame and worthlessness about who I was in the world. And so we are coming with that. And then as a result of this, we feel badly. And so what some people do, we all want to feel better. And so we use drugs. And the drugs, the crack made us feel a little bit better. Unfortunately, it's a downhill space with that. But we're always, as human beings, trying to relieve the stress and pain we feel. And unfortunately, for some people, that turns into addiction.
Well, no, go ahead.
So when a child is living in a home with a parent with substance use disorders, if we really want to help that child, we also have to help the parent deal with and get treatment for their substance use problems. We don't write them off and say they're terrible people.
Well, we all want to feel better, and she's committed her life to that. You could call the B-sides the better sides. The podcast, gosh, what a great invention. What a great woman. What a great effort to use this podcast to start. Healing is a revolution, but to start this revolution around healing. Dr. Denise Shervington, how can people support the B-sides? How can they tune in? How can we make sure that we're all part of this healing revolution around mental health?
Well, some amazing people have really chosen to share their stories, open up about the traumas they experienced and some of the ways they've made it through, the struggles along the way. And this is what the podcast is. People genuinely sharing their healing journeys. And, as ordinary people, we listen to each other and we learn from each other. And that's the best way sometimes for us to heal, is to hear each other's story, to support each other, to create a holding space. And I think this is what the podcast does. And the book, it brings us back to some understanding of how we got to where we are, and offers some pathways towards healing individually and as a collective.
I can't wait to get Prof on the B-sides because I want to be part of that revolution. The corner of the phrase tournament Tuesday.
Here you go.
Prof, you ready for the B-side?
Y'all not playing with my brain.
Dr. Shervington can help you.
I'm okay.
Prof feels he's okay.
And look, when and Dr. Shervington, what we know is in my limited and in your unlimited, we know when somebody says they're okay, and they need the B-sides. The B-side podcast. Let's support this revolution. We look forward to our next conversation with you. I think that's going to be in December, right, Dr. Shervington?
Yes, and may you all be happy. May you
Thank you.
Healthy. It's great always being on your show.
We love you times 10, Dr. Denise Shervington. Man, last time she was on, you were so relaxed. Dr. Shervington's voice can kind of do that to you, huh?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, because you had a few moments where you were getting ready to say "I got to," and you were like, you took a deep breath and you were like,
I rethought it.
Yeah,
I was gonna pounce on it, then I rethought it. Yeah, wow.
I like what Brother Corey said. We probably need to cut her loose on everybody. Yeah. At least let her talk to him, huh? I'm gonna listen to the podcast. I can't wait till you on the podcast. I want to see you in that chair with Dr. Shervington.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Guys, look, if you're not in that, let's support the B-sides. Healing is a Revolution, Dr. Shervington, a podcast we all need to listen to. But let's not forget the food pantry. That's this Wednesday. That's tomorrow. Representative Matthew Willard is having his food drive at St. Raymond St. Leo Church, 2619 Paris Avenue. That's Wednesday, tomorrow, my mother's 90th birthday, from 9 to 12. And, of course, Abundant Life Tabernacle. One of our leaders, Bishop Designate Tyrone Jefferson, the senior pastor, their Thanksgiving basket giveaway, 500 families. That's today at 1701 Franklin Avenue, where my cousin Glow's going to be at both of them. Y'all see Glow, tell her hello. She may put on a different wig, but she's at all of the giveaways. That's today, Pastor Jefferson, 1701 Franklin Avenue, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And tomorrow, with Representative Willard, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Y'all have a wonderful day.